You're on the clock at the end of the third round, beginning of the fourth round of your redraft league, and you're considering taking the first tight end off the board. There are plenty of options. We've got two other older options, but for the purposes of today's discussion, we're going to talk to two young guys. So, do you go with Detroit's Sam LaPorta going into his second season, or the third-year Arizona Cardinals tight end Trey McBride? Stay tuned to the Fantasy Football Universe to find out. Hello, everyone, and welcome back into the Fantasy Football Universe. I am Aaron St. Dennis. Find me everywhere at FF Mad Scientist. Joined by Jesse Moeller. You can find him at jmoeller05. Thank you for tuning in. You can check out all our written content over on the website, fantasyfootballuniverse.com. Pretty much we are available in every form, everywhere. You've got videos on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all that fun stuff at the FF Universe. Follow, rate, review, subscribe, comment, all that fun shit. We would greatly appreciate it. We try to get to all the useful comments and questions as soon as we can. We are also scheduled, I believe it's posted now. We have a Reddit AMA over on the big, r/fantasy football group. Reddit's not my thing, but it's got 2.5 million people in there. So if you have some questions, trade debates, all that kind of interesting roster stuff for the people who didn't get in on our roster audits. I know we're going to do some more of those, but if you don't want to wait, head over and go check out my Twitter, Jesse's Twitter. I think Jeremy and SC have it posted. It's also on the main. We have a link there to our AMA. Post your question, comment, whatever it is. I think they want to run it on Reddit for a couple of days, and we're going to attempt – depending on how many freaking questions there are, we're going to attempt to do it live and answer them all Thursday. If there's too many, we may do one of them recorded and just release it the next day. But regardless, we will be there to answer questions on the Reddit AMA. Today, we continue on with our player debates, kind of the on-the-clock debate here of, two players we think are in the similar range. I know for the purposes of overall ADP, LaPorta's going a little bit earlier, but you've got, it seems, a mix of four tight ends. Like I said, too old, too young, because it's redraft, so all of a sudden age doesn't matter. But you've got Andrews and Kelsey. They seem to be going around 2 and 4, and then you've got LaPorta, McBride being 1 and 3. So you've got a mix there, depending on preference, age, old, young, whatever. Those are your top four, but we're going to discuss, we kind of grouped them. We're going to go with the two young guys today, and I think the two older guys tomorrow. So this one is Sam LaPorta of Detroit, Trey McBride of Arizona. LaPorta obviously broke out last year as a rookie, his only season, 17 games. He had 86 receptions, 120 targets, 889 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns. Trey McBride, it was his second year. His first year was spent largely buried behind Zach Ertz. He finished as tight end 39, saw very little playing time. 29 receptions, 39 targets, 265 yards, and a touchdown. Last year, he finished as tight end 9 overall. Even that wasn't a full year of production. I know it says he played 17 games, but if you look at it, he started slow till about week 6, 7 is where it looks like they officially moved on from Zach Ertz. And then he goes from, 5.5, 5.5, 1.5, 1.5, 4, 11.5, 6, 11.5, 27.5, 24.5. So he goes from where he's absolutely a catch or two and 20 yards a game to where he's the league leader in tight ends in targets per game. Last year finished with 81 catches, 106 targets, 825 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. So obviously LaPorta had the better stats, similar targets or similar receptions, a little bit more targets. The difference seemed to be here. LaPorta had much higher touchdown upside. Yeah. I think that was probably Arizona's offense wasn't now that great. So there's off the top of my head, this one seemed to be probably an easy Sam LaPorta slam dunk. Obviously, he's about 10 to 15 picks higher in ADP. We're going to see how it goes. I went on the FTN podcast there with Jeremy Popes, and I got to do the preview for the Lions. And I said, if you own any of the Lions skill players, congratulations, because there's 5 of them. They're ultra consolidated, and they got no target competition. So Sam LaPorta should be just as good, if not better. Trey McBride's a little worrisome. I mean, they got Hollywood moved out, but they got Marvin Harrison Jr. moved in. I don't know. I'll briefly get into the rosters here. So Detroit's got St. Brown, Jamison Williams. I realize different position, but that's who's going to take up the most of the targets because tight end, it's him. He's got Brock Wright, James Mitchell, Shanesville. He's easily the one. But so he's got to compete with St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Khalif Raymond, DPJ, Traquan Smith, if you still believe in him. I liked him as a Saint, but there's not much there. Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously, is going to take some out of the backfield. So there's a little bit of target competition, but it all comes down to, it's mostly going to be him, St. Brown, and Gibbs. Jamison Williams, he probably deserves his own debate if we could find a player in his category because he's all over. He's really polarizing. Cardinals, on the other hand, Elijah Higgins and Tip Riemann are the only tight ends behind him. He's got James Conner. I don't know if Conner's necessarily the running back pass catcher he used to be, but he's got Marvin Harrison Jr. Then it really falls off. I really liked Michael Wilson, but I don't know. He's still a project. They've got Zay Jones here, Greg Dortch. I don't know. What do you think here as far as, overall target competition here? Who do you think has the better pathway to a heavy workload, I guess? They both had 105 to 120 targets-ish last year. Who do you think is a safer path to workload? Who do you think has the overall higher upside for touches here?
So I'm looking at them both kind of similar ways because with LaPorta, also you can take in context, he got injured at the end of the last season. He hurt his knee and he still played through it, so it affected his numbers a little bit. But overall,
he almost missed the playoff game. They thought they were losing it here in Detroit. They played him in that last game, and they thought he was going to miss the playoffs. So.
It looked bad, too. I was surprised. But, hey, he's a tough son of a bitch, so congrats to him. I think he has much more competition. And I get it. We'll talk about, Marvin Harrison Jr., how good a prospect he is. Guess what? He already has Amon-Ra St. Brown there, who's one of the better wide receivers what he is in the NFL. On top of that, you have one of the best pass-catching backs in Jahmyr Gibbs. And then you have Jamison Williams. If he could ever do anything, he could be the deep threat. There's guys in that offense you can see pieces for. Outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. and then James Conner in Arizona, it is barren. I know you talked about Michael Wilson, but I think he's just a guy. And then outside of that, they took Tip Raymond, and it's Tip Raymond's a blocking tight end. He's not going to run the routes. That's why they took him to block to open up the role for McBride to play the big slot. So I think theoretically, it's as good as LaPorta was. I think it's easier for McBride, and I've kind of been on the McBride trade ever since last year's. If you look at his stats since week 8 last year, he absolutely exploded on a per route basis. He was the best tight end in the NFL, even better than Travis Kelce.
When I think everyone's worrying, he got Marvin Harrison Jr. added. Well, who cares? That's all they added. And LaPorta already has basically Marvin Harrison Jr. He's got a top 5 dynasty receiver in St. Brown. But I think you'll probably agree with me on your barometer here for what could be an elite tight end. I look for a guy who has a pathway, a fairly easy pathway to being at very minimum the number 2 in targets on his team. I assume you're going to say you think McBride has a better shot here of being the number 2? Obviously, I don't think it's going to be Harrison. It's going to be St. Brown. That's going to be your ones, I would assume. I think LaPorta has a lot more. Has a lower chance of. You know what? I think they're both going to be the. I'm trying to phrase it here. I think they both are going to be the number 2 in targets on their team, but I think that after LaPorta, there's still some options in Detroit, whether it be Gibbs or whatnot. Arizona, McBride and Harrison are this offense. There's not really anything. So I think they both have the pathway to the number 2 target. I just think there's going to be more volume. It's going to be a bigger piece of the pie here for McBride. I don't know. I think I talked myself in a circle. I having a hard time really explaining that.
Yeah, I'm with you. No, it's interesting. And the fact is, Harrison's as good as a prospect is, he's still a rookie. We don't know how good he's going to be. Is he going to be as good as Amon-Ra St. Brown? Maybe in that offense. I don't know. I still need to see it. I can't just be all right, we're going to lock him in for 150 targets and be super efficient. We just don't know how it's going to go for him. He's one of the better wide receiver prospects we get, but there's still risk with the rookie. So, I think straight out of the gate, it's probably going to be heavily McBride involved, and they're going to kind of bring what am I blanking on his game a little bit, but they're going to bring him along a little bit to kind of like let McBride run that offense because he was the focal point in Arizona down the stretch from week 8 on. Like there was nobody better for fantasy football than what he was doing. So yeah, I lean McBride. I don't see the difference in like 15 spots in ADP. It doesn't make sense to me. I think we saw the touchdowns and how good LaPorta was. He finishes as the tight end 1 on a points per game basis. It's like Kelsey slightly edged him, but I think people are holding on to that a little bit too much with them. Like they should be consolidated a lot closer together personally.
Yeah, it's amazing. They're basically the same height, basically the same weight, pretty much the same speed. Like they're pretty even across the board. The only thing that worries me, I'm not necessarily as in on the Arizona Cardinals offense here. Whereas I think, and that's going to be a problem. You kind of seen it last year. Like they had targets. So you had LaPorta with 120, McBride with 106, comparable. 86 to 81 in catches for McBride, so pretty close. Yards, 889 to 825, so slightly again, LaPorta. The difference for me was 10 touchdowns for LaPorta, 3 for McBride. And that worries me because I think this might be an Arizona team again that's going to struggle to score. I know Marvin Harrison Jr. is great, but one receiver doesn't typically turn around an entire offense. They're not necessarily the impact position to take a garbage low-end offense and turn them into a top 3 offense. It just doesn't happen like that. Like you see, I don't have an example off the top of my head, but like we're going to see this with Justin Jefferson. Is Justin Jefferson elite enough that he's going to have to produce here with not a whole lot else there? Like we don't know what this quarterback's going to do. So what are your thoughts on the overall offenses? Do the Cardinals scare you?
A little bit. Like the offense is not as good as the Lions. The Lions have been in this process of building in the past few years. It's basically complete. The offense they're basically bringing everybody back that they had. They didn't change much out. Where Arizona, they may change the offensive line. They bring in Harrison. And Kyler is finally back healthy. Like he can back for the ACL. He's still learning. It's still year 2 of the new system. So like things are still changing in Arizona. It's getting better. But yeah, I expect, and Detroit, they have a ton of games at home, which they're incredible offense there. So I expect it to be more like control and similar where Arizona's probably going to have more spike weeks. But like I just think Kyler's a really good quarterback. And I have less concern about them. And I do a lot of teams that are building because I trust Kyler in what he's able to do. Worst case, he could run around like a little mini and just scramble for 15 seconds, finally make a play happen. But overall, I still think they'll be like a top 10, 15 offense, worst case Arizona. Detroit, like I'm basically set with them being top 5. Like I don't think it's going to be much lower because that's how good that offense is. And they're going to play all those games in the Dome. So, like, we know how good Goff plays in there. So, I think the floor is very high for Detroit. I think Arizona can get there, though.
I think also the addition here of Marvin Harrison Jr. as a potential deeper threat could help stretch the field because I'm looking at the numbers here on Player Profiler between the two of LaPorta and McBride. And LaPorta seemed like, I know St. Brown wasn't necessarily a deep threat. He was more of a slot guy, but it looked like he opened the field up a bit here for LaPorta because LaPorta is like across the board deeper all along. Deeper air yards, better air yard share, deeper ADOT, whereas McBride, like it's like 1.5 yards shorter on the ADOT. Red zone targets, that's another one. LaPorta, that's why he had so many more. He had 16 red zone targets compared to 11 for McBride. So it just seems like the way they're operating, like Sam LaPorta was kind of used as everything here where, McBride, they really seemed to ease him in. And obviously, like I said, that was given 6 or 7 games there where they were still going with Zach Ertz before they said abandon ship and moved on. So I just think for me, by the numbers, this one looks like pretty much easy Sam LaPorta. I just think that Sam LaPorta for me is closer to having already peaked than McBride. I think if you go back at the end of his career and take a look at what their career seasons end up being for fantasy, I think LaPorta got to about 80 to 90% of his peak last year, where I think McBride still is only at about 70, where I think they're both elite, and I think LaPorta's been better and probably will, but I think there's a lot more left in McBride's game where I think just because this seems like an easy Sam LaPorta right now, and I'll end up going Sam LaPorta, I'm sure, but I think long-term McBride has just as much, if not a higher ceiling. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. The difference between them, and McBride basically played half a season where he was in a shadow and they didn't. And there was an injury the previous year and things all that nature worked against him. But really is a historically dumb decision by this offense to trust Zach Ertz when you're completely rebuilding and not let Trey McBride do his thing. I was like ranting about this 2 years ago, but whatever. The thing that he does differently, and it reminds me of George Kittle, is Trey McBride offers yak far superior to what Sam LaPorta does, which is interesting because he's a better overall athlete. But McBride's usage in game, he's like a more fluid athlete. And you see that, and then why he had more yak, even though he had the lower, like the ADOT, his target share was higher. And like what he did on a per touch basis with the yak, like that gives him a special element where you're able to get more out of what you're doing. So even if his role is not as downfield, like the fact he can do what he could do, where he can break tackles, make those big plays happen, like that's how you get a special player at tight end, where you get someone. I know we talk about Kyle Pitts, who kind of offers a similar thing to that, right? Where they give you a little extra on top of it. So like with Harrison, I'm curious to see if they're going to deploy him deep or they're going to actually kind of let him reign in the middle of the field because they're going to focus on the offense on him. So I think kind of works for McBride a little bit more where he has a little bit of that untacked upside that you're talking about. When you add the yak in on top of it, because he was still, his target rate was the best in the NFL of all tight ends, 26%. So like when he was running a route, he was targeted the highest of all the tight ends. So it can even come down a little bit. And I think his floor is really high. I just don't think LaPorta should be going multiple rounds above him. I think they should really theoretically be back-to-back, right, with Kelsey and ADP.
Yeah, it's funny, too, if you look at it, the difference in quarterback really showed through with Kyler missing, 10 games, was it? Like the target accuracy, 11th overall for LaPorta, 35th for McBride. True catch rate, he goes from an actual catch rate of 76%. This is McBride. True catch rate is 94.2%, putting him at 3rd overall. LaPorta 20th overall. So it seems just like McBride has the better hands here. And I thought that when I compared them originally, it's just that the targets from not Kyler Murray, even the targets from Kyler. Goff, I think, is a more accurate quarterback. But overall, I think it's entirely possible McBride is the better player. And I know all along I said I think I'm going to end up going McBride, but I think this is a case for me of if you want to take the safe play, I think LaPorta is the safer play. I think this sounds crazy, but I think McBride has the higher ceiling for me. I just see I think McBride has like a top 2 or 3 tight end skill set in this league. And I just think that if Kyler is a halfway decent passer here and this offense is halfway passable, I think McBride could just really go off this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if McBride didn't find himself as the tight end 1 at the end of the year. So I think my end here, if I'm on the clock, I'm going McBride. But that's another thing. Like, I think I'm also willing to go McBride because I can get him 15 picks later. Like, if you're going to tell me I'm on the clock in the 4th round and I have to pick one, I'm probably going to go straight up LaPorta. But you're going to give me one of them at the end of the 3rd and one of them maybe at the start of the 5th. Give me McBride. I'm going to have a ton of shares of McBride, I think. I just think I love the ceiling here. The overall potential, I think, is just awesome. Well, what are your thoughts here? What's your end decision here?
Yeah, like you saw in our Dynasty startup, I took McBride fairly early because he's been my tight end 1 ever since the season ended, and people kind of thought that was kind of cuckoo for going that. And I was like, man, what he's able to do in an offense. So if you give me a tight end that gives you the athleticism upside plus yak ability and there's a target monster, that's like the holy trinity, and they're running all the routes because if you're running above 80% of the routes, that's good. That's what he was doing since we get on. So yeah, he has Kyler Murray. You check it off. It should be a good offense. I think that's the one question mark. But yeah, if we're talking at ADP, I would still take Trey McBride. I would just not draft either one at overall pick 30 because you can get into Dalton Kincaid and those guys later who are still really good bets. But overall, I'll take McBride over LaPorta, and I'm just going to stand with it, even if it's a straight-up spot, if I don't like the discount.
Yeah, that's not how I thought it would play out. I started this going, I really like McBride, but I think I'm going to take the safe play here in LaPorta. And then as I read through it and as I went through it, I looked and I said, I found myself unintentionally convincing myself to go McBride. And I think I like McBride. I think he has the over, because we've seen even at 1 year of production isn't necessarily indicative of what they're going to be. Like Pitt's rookie year was awesome. He hasn't come anywhere close since. I'm not saying LaPorta is going to be Pitts, but like, I don't know. I just think the overall ceiling here, like I said, it's a ceiling argument for me, and it's McBride in the end.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like it's, I've been on this for a while, so like this is kind of me just talking about my priors with it. But I don't think there's a wrong bet between these two players tight end. Like I think they're both very good, and they're going to be long-term dynasty assets, and also like in season they should be fine. I think what needs to change for McBride is the touchdown needs to change. So he needs to see more touchdown usage. If he gets that, then I think he's going to outbeat LaPorta. But if he loses 10-3 in touchdowns again, like it's going to be really hard for him to overcome that. So that's the one thing against him. So his role needs to shift a little bit, but it's year 2 with Kyler back. I think he's one of the bigger threats to the offense. So as long as Tip Raymond doesn't turn into Darnell Washington, like I think we'll be fine.
Yeah. For me, it's also a case of I think Jahmyr Gibbs is far more of a target threat than James Conner. And I think Jamison Williams, if you believe in him or not, is far better than anything on the Cardinals roster outside of Marvin Harrison. So
yeah, like he's a knucklehead, but if he figures it out, like he could be very good too. So it's another guy that can cut into that overall target share, which we don't want to see. Like we want as few people as possible. So that's why I personally like the Arizona offense because it's really easy to pick. You got Connor, you got Harrison, you got McBride, Kyler. I just want all 4 of those guys on the offense, and I can roll with them. Like I don't have to worry about it. I know with Detroit offense might be a little bit better, but there's a little more pieces kind of nipping at the heels of those guys.
All right, that concludes this player debate where on the clock we both chose Trey McBride, surprisingly. Check out our AMA over on Reddit. It is posted now. We will be taking questions all the way through the week, and we'll be answering them towards the end of the week. Check back tomorrow for the next series of player debates. We've done what? We've done a wide receiver and a tight end. You and Jeremy are doing the next one. So you want Hurts and Allen, or do you want one of the receivers? What are you guys going to handle?
Well, I think we'll do the quarterbacks. I think we'll do Hurts and Allen.
Okay. So then tomorrow will be Hurts and Allen with Jeremy and Jesse.
Let's go, baby.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in. Head over to fantasyfootballuniverse.com for all of our written content. Follow us all over social media, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff for all of our written content and our video work. Like, follow, rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thank you all for tuning in. We will see you again tomorrow.